जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन जमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंजा बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन जमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंजा बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन जमुना तीरावनचारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम हरे हरे जय राधा माधव श्री राधे जय राधा माधव राधा माधव श्री राधे जय राधा दामोदर राधा श्री राधे जय राधा दामोदर राधा दामोदर श्री राधे जय ललिता विशाखा श्री राधे जय ललिता विशाखा श्री राधे जय निथाय गौर सुंदर गौर हरि जय निथाय गौर गौर हरि जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपदा जय जय प्रभुपाद Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Good morning and Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we'll be going through Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, text 31. Sorry, chapter 31, text 23, 24, and 25. So 3 texts. Thanks, Taraka Prabhu, for putting it up on the chat. I can also share my screen for those who would like to see it on the database. Let's do that. Just let me know once if you see it. If you don't see it, just give me somebody let me know. Okay, so let's start off. So today's presentation is going to be about the power of hearing. These 3 verses actually are pretty strong as a reminder in terms of the importance of hearing. So we'll start off with text number 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Nashtaprayasya Bhradeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Na Ishtuki. Okay, reading from text 23. Maitreya Vacha iti prachetas taso rajan anyascha bhagavad katha shaivayatva brahmalokam yayo sayambhuvo munihi. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to go through each verse once, the synonyms and then the translation, then the purport. Maitreya Vacha, Maitreya said, iti, thus, Prachata sa, the Prachatas, Rajan, O king, Anya, others, cha, also, Bhagavat Katha, topics about the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shrivayatva, after instructing Brahmalokam to Brahmalok, Yayo went back. Swayambhuva, the son of Lord Brahma, Muni, the great sage. Translation. The great sage, Maitreya, continued, my dear King Vidur, Sri Narad Muni, the son of Lord Brahma, thus described all these relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the Prachatas. Afterward, he returned to Brahmalok. Purport. Prabhupada Ki Jai. One has to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a pure devotee. The Prachatas got this opportunity from the great sage Narada, who told them of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. Just go to the next verse. Tepi tanmukha niryatam yaso loka malapaham harer nisyamya tat padam daya yantas tad gatim yayo. There, the Prachatas, api, also, tat, of Narada, mukha, from the mouth, niryatam, gone forth, yasa, glorification, loka, of the world, mala, sins, apaham, destroying, hare, of Lord Hari, nisamya, having heard, tat, of the Lord, padam, feet, dhyayantaha, meditating upon, tat gatim, unto his abode, Yayuhu went. Translation. Hearing from Narad's mouth the glories of the Lord, which vanquish all the ill fortune of the world, the Prachatas also became attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Meditating on his lotus feet, they advanced to the ultimate destination. Purport. Here it is seen that by hearing the glories of the Lord from a realized devotee, the Prachatas easily attained strong attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then meditating on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord at the end of their lives, they advance to the ultimate goal, Vishnu Loka. It is sure and certain that anyone who always hears the glories of the Lord and thinks of his lotus feet will reach that supreme destination. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 18.65, Mana mana bhavo mana bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaro mam evasyasi satyam te pratigyam priyo seme. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. Text 25. Etate pihitam shattar yanmam tvam paripristhavan prachetasam naradasya samvadam hariketanam. Etat, this, te, unto you, abhihitam, instructed, shata, all vidur, yat, whatever, mam, unto me, tvam, you, paripristavan, inquired, prachetasam, of the prachetas, naradasya, of narad, samvadam, conversation, hari kirtanam, describing the glories of the Lord. Translation. My dear Vidur, I have told you everything you wanted to know about the conversation between Narada and the Prachetas. Conversation describing the glories of the Lord. I have related this as far as possible. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam describes the glories of the Lord and his devotees. Because the whole subject matter is the glorification of the Lord, naturally, the glorification of his devotees automatically follows. Om Jnana Timarandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Well, thank you for joining us on Srimad Bhagavatam, on our daily Bhagavatam Katha. Very, very important 3 verses here. It reminds us of our constant need or importance of hearing. So we'll go back to text number 23. Here it is mentioned that Sri Narad Muni is coming to the conclusion of instructing the Prachetas. He describes all the relationships between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Afterwards, he returns to Brahmalok, which implicitly indicates that he was coming from Brahmalok, even though he's an intergalactic traveler. He doesn't really have a home. He's a sannyasi. At the same time, he basically came from Brahmalok to visit the Prachetas to give instructions. So very important here. And the purport actually tells us that one has to hear about the Supreme Personality Godhead from a pure devotee. So one may argue that the Prachetas were actually formally instructed by both Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. So why is there a need to have more instructions, especially from Narad Muni? So that was something that kind of resonated with me. He actually said in the purports that the Prachetas almost forgotten the instructions from Lord Vishnu himself. Therefore, hearing from a devotee is very important because it brings about the purpose behind the process. So sometimes we also get sidetracked. Even on a daily basis, we may attend Bhagavatam, we may hear from devotees, pure devotees, advanced devotees, and then we may also forget instructions. And that happened even to Arjuna, and Krishna had to remind him. Of course, Arjuna was playing a role of a normal conditioned soul, even though he was a dearmost friend of Krishna. At the same time, it serves as a constant reminder to us the importance of constant hearing. So if it can happen to the Prachetas, the tendency to get sidetracked can happen to any one of us. So that's really important. There are really good examples of how even Narada, Srila Narada Muni, himself attained perfection through hearing, through serving the Paramhamsas during the rainy season. It's so powerful that he actually, was taking Mahaprasad, he was actually listening, hearing in to, with the spiritual topics as the Paramhamsas were speaking in his house. As you may know, during the rainy seasons, the monks, the sannyasis, they actually take shelter and they actually go to houses. This is not a new practice. This has been going on even in other traditions, even the Buddhism tradition. When there's a rainy season, the Paramhamsas, the devotees, the monks, they all try to get some shelter in a place. And that's where they basically kind of not hibernate, but they continue their process, hearing and chanting, taking Mahaprasad, etc. So Narad Muni actually served these great souls, and he also took Mahaprasad. And the biggest Mahaprasad he actually took was hearing, right? We normally think Mahaprasad is food, something that's been honored. It's been taken by Krishna. But hearing is also prasad. Prasadam means mercy. So anything and everything can be prasadam. It doesn't have to be just food. That's one external kind of sense that one can understand that everything has an essence, and usually a Vaishnava sees the essence of everything. So this is where the inner meaning comes in, where we have to understand what's been said to us as well. And that's going to be a segue to the next point that we want to make here. But again, Narad Muni was a perfect example of someone that attained perfection through hearing. Lord Brahma was another one, his father, even though Narada was self-manifested in a way, Swayambhuva. Brahma was also Swayambhuva in a way. He was born from a lotus flower that grew from Lord Vishnu. And when he actually arose, he actually saw darkness all around him. And he tried many years. He came down, he climbed down the stem. He went out, he was trying to get out. He was trying to have his own endeavors. He was trying to get out of the situation that he was in. But Brahma heard these words, tapa, tapa, tapa. He heard these words, but the same instruction again and again. And that instruction was austerity. Tapa means austerity. And from that, Brahma could have just ignored it, but he knew he was in no position to ignore this instruction. So what did he do? Went back up the lotus, sat down, and engaged in austerity. And that's pretty powerful, even for us. Sometimes we may, when our spiritual master, when our guru, when our seniors give us instructions, we may start thinking, oh, he means it this way, or he means it that way. I think I can't do this, but I can do this. He doesn't really understand me. He's just a normal person. He doesn't really understand my situation. All these things are an offense, because the whole point of a spiritual master, is that he's going to probably tell you something that you don't want to hear, more than what you want to hear. I think that's the ratio. 90% he'll tell you something that you don't want to hear. He or she, sorry. So we have to also understand that when those instructions come, they are seeing things in a very different way than we are. We may think, oh, this person's normal, or they haven't lived the one popular one is they haven't lived in the material world. These sannyasis or these gurus, they don't know, or they've been out of touch, but they don't know my situation. So there are so many arguments one can think of in the mind, but we don't really see the way a spiritual master can see, because they are actually seers. They have divine vision. So ultimately, it might be, we might struggle through the instructions. We might also have some material struggles, but ultimately it's for our spiritual benefit, and that's different. Sometimes we think, oh, if it's going to give us material discomfort, I can't practice properly, and therefore that instruction is imperfect. Sometimes we think like this. So we have to also be careful here. Brahma was a perfect example. He didn't argue back. He just went. He had no choice. He knew his situation. He knew his conditioning. So he went up on the lotus and he engaged in tapasya for many years. think it was 10,000 years, but somebody can correct me later in the class. But yeah, he engaged in austerity, and then what happened? Right? The Lord manifested within his heart. He revealed his name, forms, qualities, and pastimes. It's a beautiful Chatu Shloka in the Bhagavatam that tells us about that. But it's beautiful. Brahma actually became self-realized through this process of hearing one instruction. That's all it was, just one instruction. So one has to hear about the Supreme Personality Godhead from a pure devotee, as the purport says. So Shravanam is very, very important. It's obviously the first word in the Navad Bhakti. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam. So we see that to establish a relationship is through the hearing process. So therefore, Vani is very, very important because it transcends Vapu, or the physical association of the pure devotee. Someone can argue, why can't we just read Srila Prabhupada's books? This is association through instructions, through Vani. It's a great point. Why can't we? We can. Why not? We can associate with Srila Prabhupada through his books. But one thing we also need to understand is that we need a constant checking system. And therefore, we need a living, breathing Vaishnava, a devotee, advanced devotee, pure devotee, who constantly checks us, because we might be reading in a mood that might not be conducive. We might be reading and our conclusions or our Siddhanta might be a little mixed up. So this is why we have to make sure we understand in the right way. There's a lot of philosophical deviations that can be made, even the slightest. And that might deviate us from the ultimate goal, which is going back to Godhead or love for Krishna. The other point is that when one associates with a devotee, a pure devotee, then one not only gets the Shabda Praman, or the hearing. We all know that Shabda Praman means it penetrates the heart. It doesn't just stay in the brain and gets intellectualized. It actually penetrates the heart. So it's actually a medicine. Some people asked Srila Prabhupada, the benefits of the chanting. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, even chanting will benefit you. Chanting the holy names of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It will be beneficial, right? Because it penetrates the heart. It doesn't stay in the brain. It actually is medicine, right? Sometimes when you take medicine, a child may not know what it does, the effects of it. My child was sick. She wasn't so used to the flora here in Pennsylvania. She was born in Colorado, and we actually called up Premakashori Mataji, and she prescribed some laxatives. We did so many things, and ultimately we ended up giving her probiotics. And she may not understand the benefits of these various different medicines, but the benefits are already there. But at the same time, even though the Shabda Praman is there, the hearing that penetrates the heart, there is one important thing, which is what we see, which is the mood and the advancement through the association from a pure devotee. For example, Narada Muni, when he was serving the Paramhamsas, his mood, his sincerity, his humility, all these beautiful, qualities were pretty much used as service to these Vaishnavas. He wasn't just selectively hearing. He wasn't just like speculating, oh, they mean this or they mean that. He was hearing with full rapt attention. And that's the importance here, that when we hear, we have to hear in a particular mood. Amanina mani dena kirtanaya sada hari, right? So one must hear in a mood of humility, in a mood of tolerance, submission, in the correct way. There was this passage I heard, which is, try not to think about who's been saying what, try to understand what's been said. Sometimes we see that, oh, it's only a child that's telling me, I'm not going to listen to that. Or sometimes a drunkard's telling me, or someone else is telling me that's not qualified. So we put everyone in a box. At the same time, try to understand what's been said, because sometimes more often the guru has been actually telling you through these people. We hear there's many examples in the Shastras and in the pastimes that sometimes Guru speaks through different people. But how do we ensure that our mood and advancement is correct? We have to absorb the mood and the advancement of another devotee, an advanced devotee, or someone that's not disgruntled, or someone that is does not have philosophical deviations. This is very important to actually associate with healthy Vaishnavas. When I mean healthy, I don't mean healthy just physically, healthy in the terms of how they practice their Krishna consciousness, right? Do they get wrapped up in politics, or wrapped up in gossip, or all the noises that happen even within our society? Or do they actually stick to the process and they stay true to the process? And that's really important, because our process is pure. Maybe organizationally, we might not be up there because it's still a young organization. We have to also understand that. But the process is pure. And that's the thing. We need to focus on the process rather than anything else. It's the process that will take us back to God, actually, ultimately. It's nothing else. Everything else is just noise. So we just discussed that Vani is very powerful, right? One may not have the physical association of one's spiritual master, but one will continue to serve the spiritual master through the adherence of their instructions throughout one's life. So we have to understand this, that the Guru may not always be there, either physically, or even they may choose to move on. And we see this many times also, that when one Guru, disappears from this world, devotees sometimes fall away. And it's so important. It's so important to establish the Vani association. I remember when His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami actually passed away, when he entered Samadhi. There was a lot of devotees that were really distraught. There were some devotees that fell away, and there was also some devotees that basically they basically had no feeling. They actually said, "No, I'm still with my Guru. Nothing's changed." And I'm trying to understand that. I was trying to understand that myself, and I'm thinking, how's that even possible? How can somebody say that? How can they not cry when the Guru Maharaj, disappeared from this world? And that's the thing. We can see this in many levels, but the level that I understood from this devotee is that he established a very strong Vani relationship with his Guru Maharaj, that whether he was here or not, he's still serving him. Of course, there is a little bit of sadness in terms of the physical association, but we don't know in what level they're associating with each other even now as I speak. So that's very important to understand, that hearing is so powerful. When one hears the instruction, and as you strictly adhere to the instructions, that Vani relationship is already established. So now you can actually continue to serve your spiritual master when he's not in town, when he's away around the world. You can actually continue to serve him, and you can actually feel that strong bond that your Guru Maharaj is always there for you, or always there with you. There are many people, devotees I know, Srila Prabhupada disciples, that actually tell me that Srila Prabhupada actually enters their dreams. So these are another level of association that happens when one strictly follows the spiritual master. Just like there's this beautiful plaque in Bhaktivedanta Manor. It actually says that the followers, those who follow instructions, live with Srila Prabhupada forever. So that's the thing. Those who follow Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's instructions, they live with him. And who knows what could happen when that happens, right? Constant association with Srila Prabhupada, 24-hour, 24/7. So yeah, it's a good kind of reminder for all of us in terms of being fixed to follow Vani. Srila Prabhupada did push Vani. It's a good analysis of ourselves in terms of how much we are inspired, even when a pure devotee may not be physically present. I recall one incident when I was telling my Guru Maharaj about how my father was passing away so young. He's still like, he was built like an ox, and I was telling him all those things, and my Guru Maharaj responded, and he was very grave. He said, we all visitors here. And then he said something that really got me. He said, he said, even I won't be around forever. And I was just like, I wasn't even ready for that, you know. Here I am, like, my father's passing away, and now my spiritual father's telling me that he won't be around forever. But what I did understand from this statement that my Guru Maharaj made is that I need to, very strong, that I need to establish a Bhavani relationship with my Guru Maharaj. I really need to do that. Otherwise, I will fall away. There's no doubt. I might still be in ISKCON, but I might start thinking of things that I need to do, or, you know, my so-called how I can advance. So that's the thing. We need to kind of develop that Vani relationship with our spiritual master, and that has to be very, very strong, because that's eternal. That's gonna go with us. There was a interesting pastime that I want to share. It's quite personal, but hey, you know what? We're among family. I remember the time when my father was passing. My sister stuck up a beautiful photo of Vishishi Radhakrishna on the wall, and she's trying to get my father to look at the photo, you know, of Krishna, Radhakrishna, because she's like, please, Dad, please, Father, look at the photo, please, you know, this is the best thing you can do. And my father, his eyes were like, he couldn't see properly. He actually couldn't see properly. All those senses actually systematically shut down, as you know, at the time of death. But he said something important. He said, please carry on chanting and reading, which we were doing, right, in the background. And he said, I hopefully lived a life, he said, I hopefully lived a life that helped me practice hearing properly now. So that's the important thing here, that he was actually admitting that if I had to hear, if I heard properly in the past, if I did it in the right mood, I would appreciate these holy names more in my deathbed. So that was very, very important. That resonated with me, that here he is, you know, at the end of his life, and he's focusing on the hearing rather than anything else, because hearing is the first thing we do, and hearing is the last senses that actually leave us as we pass from this body. So that's very, very important. Even the scientists, there's been research to say that the last sense that shuts down as we breathe our last is the sense of hearing. So that's very important, because that tells us how important Krishna's name is. Krishna is going to be the name that's going to determine what kind of destination we have. So we see that here the Prachetas got a unique opportunity to hear spiritual vibrations from a pure devotee of the Lord. Just hearing from a pure devotee penetrates our hearts, if we are sincere, right? So there's two dynamics here. One is the hearing process, and then the second one is the kirtana process, our own mood. Two parts. So if you're with a pure devotee, and you're having a lot of vapu, you know, association with this pure devotee, obviously the benefits are there. They obviously are, definitely. But the other side of that is we have to also take responsibility in terms of how we digest this hearing, right? This example is prasadam, let's say, for example. Now we can take prasadam, but obviously ultimately it depends on how powerful our digestive system is in terms of spiritual progress. So if we get addicted to prasadam in ways and we forget Krishna, that's also going to impact our spiritual digestion, so to speak. So it's very, very important that we take responsibility in terms of how we hear, not just hearing, not just blindly following, not just mechanically hearing. Try to look at the essence of what your spiritual master is saying and not get too hung up on the minutiae, for example. So these are the points that I kind of resonated with me, and some things I kind of had epiphanies on. It's also important to understand that Srila Narad Muni didn't just speak about Vishnu Tattva or Jiva Tattva, but the activities between both, the devotional service directly, right? He was actually speaking the Bhagavatam in a way, because what is Bhagavatam? It's about the glories of devotional service, you know, the activities between the services rendered between the Lord and his devotees. There's such a beautiful thing that Narad Muni is actually explaining. There is a beautiful, I always mention something on the Jaganashtakam because it's one of my favorite prayers, but it says here that the power of hearing is such a huge thing that anyone can think of the Supreme Lord during death goes straight to the spiritual world, right? There is after the 8th stanza, there is this beautiful thing that says, Yapate Priyata Suchi, Sarva Papa Vishud Atma, Vishnu Lokam Sagachati. So when one actually prays to the Supreme Lord, chants his names, one becomes Suchihi, one becomes pure. And what happens when one becomes pure? Sarva Papa Vishud Atma, right? All his sins are cleansed. Kleshagni, all the suffering is gone. And Vishud means pure Atma, right? Vishud Atma. And then it says, Vishnu Loka Sagachati, one enters the spiritual world straight away, without any issues, straight away into the spiritual world. So the whole Bhagavatam is descriptions and the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. And we're hearing from Srila Prabhupada and his devotees. So that's really important that here we are all getting together, listening to the Bhagavatam, constantly hearing, constantly reminding ourselves through the day. We should definitely have a meditation of the day. I kind of asked that question to Agari Krishna Prabhu yesterday. What should be our meditation of the day? I think it was good to have that introspection, that where are we at? How are we processing things? How are we understanding things? And not just attending, not just showing up. You know, even if you go to work, you know, even the manager notices when you just show up for work versus when your heart's really in it. So it's important, even though 7 o'clock in the morning, for our heart to be in it, right? It's such a hard thing because one way we can look at it is, you know, if somebody was gossiping, my senses would be like tuned to that person. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night it would be, you know, I'll be like, oh, that's juicy gossip. I'm gonna listen to this. So when it comes to Radha Krishna or the pastimes with his devotees, I'm a bit sleepy, or I'm thinking about food, or I'm thinking about my dreams, whatever. So that's the thing. Our taste ultimately will develop as we constantly hear with devotees, in association devotees, and that's the important thing here. We need to associate with those who are healthy, not just those who actually just get sidetracked with so many things that happen within the institution. There was another point I wanted to make. So that was, you can see on my screens and the notes that I made. So this is the second bit that kind of resonated with me, where the purport, the translation was mentioning that hearing from Narad Muni's mouth the glories of the Lord, which vanquishes all the ill fortune of the world. So again, it vanquishes all. So when you're practicing properly, this is actually a measuring stick that one actually becomes very, very fortunate. And fortunate in what way? Not just money, not just wealth. Everyone thinks fortune is synonymous with Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is synonymous with just wealth. No, that's not the case here. Fortune actually means one becomes a pure devotee, right? Can you imagine billions and billions of lifetimes that we've gone through so much suffering. We've been eaten by many, many animals. We've died in worse deaths. We've suffered so much. And this process is stopping all that. It's stopping all that. We're actually attaining pure bliss, Krishna Ananda, Krishna consciousness, right? Krishna conscious bliss. So it's such an important thing here that if we're practicing properly, one of the words is subhada, right? One actually gets all auspiciousness when one practices properly. This is in the Nectar of Devotion. Kleshagni, all the material suffering actually diffuses, it actually gets destroyed. So that's the thing. Now one may argue that my situation hasn't changed, Prabhu. I've been practicing for years. I've been chanting for years and I'm still in the same muck. I'm still in the same problem. Whatever it is, whether it's a situation, whether it's someone that you love and they don't love you back, or the relationships, or this or that, the other. We gotta understand one thing, that when you're practicing properly, it's really our consciousness that changes. That's the only thing that we have control over. It's not that magically everything kind of changes around us, right? And when we're practicing we have to also understand that our treasure is the holy names. That's how we define our success. Our definition of success is not whether something changes around us or whether somebody treats us differently, etc. Our treasure chest is actually the holy names. It's the devotees that care about us, that love us, the devotees that we're going to advance with. It's all a journey. It's an amazing journey that we can have together. All right, so there are a few takeaways as we conclude. So these are some of the things I try to. One of my mentors told me this: 3 things you should try to pick up from Bhagavatam when you do your daily reading. So these are the 3 things that I picked up, which is number 1, try to establish a Vani association with a pure devotee. That means a strict adherence to his instructions, even when they may not be present, right? So, and this obviously brings about all kinds of perfection. Try to chant with a mood of surrender rather than courtesy rounds, right? So importance, again, once again, it's the importance of hearing. Hearing is very, very important. One example I had, I personally experienced was His Grace Nirantar Prabhu. He gave a class a few months ago. I think it was a Chaitanya Charitamrita class in the evening for those who were present. And he said something. So we were living in Denver, and he was downstairs, and he was in his bhajan kutir in the basement. I don't know what it is. He loved the basement. So it's a nice place. We didn't just chuck him in a dungeon. I just want to let you know that. But he was chanting, he was chanting, and I could hear him chanting, and it was just so beautiful. He took his time chanting, and it was just so nice. You can actually see that he relishes these rounds. It's not just like going through it. And it took him 3 hours, So he came upstairs. He's like, yes, I feel blissful. I feel so happy. And I'm looking at him. I'm thinking, wow, how can somebody be so happy after, And he was happy while he was doing his rounds as well. That's the other thing, I was like shocked about. We also had one pastime where Bhakti Swami was at our place for one night in Denver. He was upstairs. He woke up around, I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning, he woke up. So, and he was just chanting so nicely and so slowly and just so effective. So the quality of rounds is so, so important. It's so easy to murmur the chanting, but hearing is a science, right? It really takes practice, and it also, you'll see that it rubs off during the day. If our hearing is not proper and it's inattentive while we're chanting, even when your wife or your husband might talk to you and you might be inattentive because you've been practicing for inattentiveness for 2-3 hours. So we're good at it. So it's very, very important to, practice attentiveness in everything, not just our rounds, but in everything. Just hear, and that's going to bring us some kind of perfection. And it is obviously the Yog Dharma, right? We're doing it because that's a prescribed method. And the third point is associate with those who are healthy in the mood about our process and our movement. Any negativity can cause major upheavals in our mood. So again, time and time again, if you look at it, our activities don't change. We're still going to be cooking, we're still going to be cleaning, we're still going to be serving in some way, right? Sometimes some of us want to make this unique contribution to the movement. I want to do something. I'm the Messiah. I'm going to change everything as it goes. That's not what our movement's about. Our movement is the inner movement we have to make. The inner movement is obviously changing our mood, transcending, obviously, our consciousness. So that's the movement we're trying to emphasize here, that let's change ourselves first. I'm not going to quote Gandhi, but hey, be the change that you want to make in the world. But it's so important to have this Hare Krishna movement inside of us, make that movement from inside our consciousness, and naturally everything will start transforming around you. You'll see it. The exchanges and the will be very, very, very different. Not to say these problems will go away. So again, some really, really amazing tidbits that I picked up from this reading. But yeah, just wanted to conclude there. So we talked about hearing, the process of hearing, and hearing in the best possible mood, and associating with those who are strong in the practice and healthy in their consciousness. All right, so we'll it's 7:45, not my clock, but just want to conclude there, and I'll kind of open up to the forum if anyone has any comments, questions, concerns, realizations, etc. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm gonna go out here. I'm gonna.
Hare Krishna, Kaylee. Obeisances.
I do have a question. Well, thank you for the class firstly. It's really nice points, and I really like the emphasis on the reading. Actually, I've been hearing a lot about how important reading is and hearing. So also in the verses that we were reading today, it talks about hearing from a pure devotee in particular. And so I'm just curious about this, because when we read the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna is saying, amongst thousands of persons, hardly one strives for perfection. And amongst those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So we have to understanding that this people that really know Krishna are extremely, extremely rare. So how do we understand like the Krishna consciousness movement? I mean, there's so many gurus. How do we know like who really knows Krishna? Like it feels really hard. Like it feels like everyone does, but at the same time, it's like, can everyone really know Krishna in truth? Because Krishna is explaining how rare it is, even for people who have achieved perfection. So how can we understand? And
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one way I would try to understand that is that it's really, really rare. Like, only reason Krishna consciousness spread in this world is because Mahaprabhu came down, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came down. But if you look at the ratio of those who don't know Krishna versus those who do know, at least in the mature world, it's very, very rare. That's one way. Even though we're an association of many, many devotees, we're in a society for Krishna consciousness. This is the unique contribution that Srila Prabhupada has made to the world. He built a house of a family of devotees, right? And one may be born in a particular family, right? And they might think, oh, this is, how is everyone so amazing? How does everyone know Krishna so much? So that comes from the point of gratefulness. One has to be grateful first, say that, oh, look at this is amazing. But being surrounded by so many spiritual uncles and spiritual fathers, mothers, aunties, etc., brothers, cousins, it does put us, it might even tell us that, oh, you know what, it's supposed to be rare. Krishna consciousness is supposed to be rare. How come everyone knows about this? That's the thing. That depends on the person's realizations, etc. For example, some of it's also faith, right? Some of it's also, you have to look at faith. You got to look at scriptures. Scriptures tell us exactly, like Arjuna asked Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, who is this person? How do they walk? How do they talk? What is the symptoms? And Krishna actually talks about it. One is actually thinking of me all the time. One is spreading my glories. So Krishna is actually talking about the symptoms of those who know Krishna, right? Even though it's rare, he's actually explaining that these are the symptoms. These are the things that you need to look out for when you're aspiring for a guru, for example. There's a beautiful book called The Spiritual Master and the Disciple. I urge you to read that. Again, a very, very good book. There are many, many gems in ISKCON, no doubt. Gurus, there might be Diksha Gurus, there might be Shiksha Gurus. There's so many wonderful examples of devotees. But just to kind of answer your question is that Srila Prabhupada kind of opened that door, right? He let all these pure devotees into his movement. Even though it's such a rare thing, he spread the mercy throughout the world. So that's my limited understanding. If anyone else would like to comment, would like to understand. Oh, so there are some questions. Yeah, what kind of tapasya did Narada engage in? Austerities are more relative based on person, time, place, circumstances. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So Narada was, to my understanding, in the Bhagavatam first canto, he served the Paramhamsas. Sure, he went to the forest, he meditated on Paramatma, but that was also based on his prior service to the Paramhamsas, the pure devotees. So he attained perfection through devotional service, right? So devotional service, we got to understand one thing. Devotional service means love. What you're doing is love for Godhead. So the process might be a little different according to different time, place, and circumstances, and different yoga. But if the intent is there that you want to get close to Krishna, you want to love Krishna, you want to develop love for Godhead, then that also becomes devotional service. My Guru Maharaj once gave me an example. I told him, I kind of said, look, I'm fried out with work. I've been working forever, and I want to do something direct for the mission. My Guru Maharaj said, look, devotional service. Why limiting devotional service to just doing things for the mission? Have you tried giving your Lakshmi, the Lakshmi that you made while you were working, to Krishna? You'll see that the whole dynamic changes. You'll see that your consciousness changes. You'll see that you'll have love for Krishna that way. So hope that answers your question, Kaylee. I saw that on the chat. Great, thank you. Okay, we have another question from Parmeshwari Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for a very nice class. My obeisances to you. So I have a question. I think you mentioned somewhat briefly earlier about putting your heart in hearing, and I realized that I really like to sit in Srimad Bhagavatam class and just able to listen and taking notes and really put my mind, my heart into it. But I know that it's not something that I can do all the time. Especially with devotees in the temple, there's always services going on at 7 a.m. in the morning. And so I was just curious if that is the case, if you may not be able to have the time that you can sit down, listen to class and put your heart into it. Is there any suggestion that you can do that? Is there anything we can do to help with that?
Oh, good question. You're asking the wrong. Yeah, actually, you're asking the right person, because my wife always tells me I'm not too good with multitasking. So I like to focus on one thing at a time. That's how I'm built. And if I do 4 or 5 things at a time, I'm telling you, this cabin will literally burn down, the one I'm staying in right now, because I'll probably leave the tea kettle on or something. So the point around that is try to, when you were in class, even if you give, let's say 5 minutes, right? You picked up 1 point. That's progress. So even if you picked up 1 point that you can actually run with during the day, that's like practical intelligence. You don't need to absorb the whole class, and usually we don't really absorb the whole class anyway. Usually, right? Even our attention span is not exactly that long compared to previous ages, the personalities from the previous ages. So the goal is to kind of look at maybe 1 or 2 or 3 tidbits, right? Little points, little things that resonated with you, and then expand on them during the day. That's what works for me. In that way, we're progressing, right? One thing Kanama Maharaj told me, very powerful. He gave a wonderful class once in Australia back in 2004 or 2005, and I said, Maharaj, after the class, as we all do, we said, Maharaj, wonderful class. And And then he said to me something really grave. He said, even if you can understand 1% of what I'm saying, you'll advance. That's the thing, right? You can theoretically, you can sit on a Bhagavatam class for 1 hour and not digest anything, right? You can actually physically sit there and not digest anything. So it's okay. It's okay if you have to interrupt the Bhagavatam class to do some service and all that. But spiritually and mentally, meditatively, you should still be in the class, if you know what I mean, even though you're outside it. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Like, for me personally, I think it's difficult for me to listen to class and do something else, because I mean, I hear, but nothing enter my consciousness, basically. I just don't remember anything. So, but I think with conscious effort, but it's require a lot of conscious effort, because doing some certain service, and that also require attention and also listening to class. Yeah,
it's amazing that you bring up that point. Sometimes we're serving and sometimes we're meditating on our own problems. We're sometimes meditating on so many things apart from the medicine, right? The thing that we're doing right now will solve all issues. That's the thing. We're not convinced that what we're doing will resolve everything, all our problems. You know? And sometimes we think we're doing devotional service and suddenly the problem's gone. Actually, the problem hasn't gone. It's just we've evolved our consciousness. You know, we don't see it as a big deal. Just like when my daughter, when she cries or she screams or whatever, it happens in family life. There were times when I used to think, oh, man, why is she doing this? I still do. Why is she doing this? I make a big deal out of it. But then my wife reminds me that it's really such a small thing that you look at it. They'll just not take it seriously. They're children. They're not in touch with their emotions yet fully. Or they are. Another way of saying it. But you know what I mean. So it's really important to be conscious of what we're doing and be we say this is a cliche, but be present in the moment. But in a Krishna conscious perspective, it means being Krishna conscious all the time. Don't while you're doing the service, think about how fortunate you are. There was one time when I was mopping the floor at the Sydney temple. I think I shared this with you, but Kanana Maharaj was walking past, and I'm like, I need some kudos, right? So I was like mopping it harder. I was mopping the floor harder, so Maharaj sees me, and Maharaj come up to me and he said, "What you're doing is a privilege. It's a privilege. You got to understand that." That's the thing. We don't really understand how much in trouble we are. We don't really understand. We're in a mature world. It's relentless out there. It's like try being an insect that lives in the forest. It's basically you're a constant target, right? The average lifespan, the life expectancy of an insect in the forest is very, very low, right? It's going to get eaten. Something's going to happen to it. So our situation is very similar to that. That we need to first be grateful of where we are, how fortunate we are that we're serving. We could be doing so many other things. People have so many problems that we probably are sheltered from. I'm not encouraging you to go out there and see what the problems are, but it's so much. It's so much. Death. There's no guarantee. The one thing guaranteed about life is death, right? Death and taxes are the most surest thing in the world. So it's coming. But I guarantee you that whatever you do right now, whatever steps you make right now, you're going to be thankful later on, 100%. Appreciate your question. Very nice.
thank you.
All right, it's almost time. Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.